Hi, I'm Kyle Milani. I'm with the product team at MarkLogic, and I'm here today to talk about the MarkLogic Data Hub. Today, I'll be demonstrating some of the capabilities of the Data Hub. And the example that I have here today that I'll be using our quick start development interface is a customer harmonization. I have different sources that I'll be harmonizing to simplify the life of developers that will only need to understand what I call here the entity, which I'll be demonstrating. So let's get here into the quick start graphical user interface for me to demonstrate these capabilities. As we see here in the dashboard, I have two databases, staging and final. At this point, I already loaded one source of data, which is the data coming from UK. If we take a look at what we're trying to do here, we're trying to harmonize to an entity. As I said, this is the way to simplify the life of developers. Different sources will be all harmonized to this entity. I have defined this entity, which is a customer, and I have some attributes that are important for customers, for developers to use. When I create the entity, I also select some attributes that I want to do deeper search. So I select these icons here that enable special indexes that speed up search on those attributes. I also have here this locker, which tells which pieces of information in this entity that are considered PII, or personal identifiable information. Okay, so I have already loaded some data. As I said, let's take a look at the data that I already loaded, which I said was from the UK source. As I said, there are two databases. There is staging and final. Once I load data, it goes to staging. Once I harmonize the data to my entity, it goes to final. Let's take a look at the data that is already loaded and harmonized from the UK. This document in particular is an XML document, and we can see here is the source, and here is it mapped to the entity. Again, the goal here is to have a simplified way for developers to consume the data. Now I'm going to load my second set of data, which is data coming from the US, and I'll show some differences in the data, which will have us doing a harmonization to have a single entity describing both sources of data. To do that, I'll go to flows, and I'll create an ingestion flow to load my second set of data. Here, this data in particular is JSON. So I created my flow. I would just go and select the source of data and run. While it's running, let's take a look at the dashboard. And we see here that the data is going to staging. And we can actually go and browse the data and check a little bit how this data looks like. As you can see, first, this is a JSON document, which is slightly different from XML. And in particular, I want to highlight one thing that is the goal here of the harmonization is to ensure that developers don't need to understand that this source in particular describes postal code using zip code, which is the common language in US. So I will have to harmonize to my entity, which is using postal code. To do that, we use what is called mapping. So let's create a mapping that will map the source document to my entity. In this mapping here, pretty much everything maps to the same except the postal code. So here I'm going and just selecting the attributes from the source that I want to map. And finally here, the source describes postal code, zip code, excuse me, and I want to map to postal code. So I saved my mapping. Now that I have my mapping, I can go to create another flow, which will be a harmonization flow. Again, what harmonization does, it gets data that I already loaded to staging as is, and I will harmonize to my entity. Here I selected the mapping that I just created. And I want to optimize a little bit this flow. First, I want it to run a little bit faster, so I will apply just for the data that I just loaded. And second, as I described previously, I selected some attributes that I want to classify as PII. I just want to apply some permissions here for me to exemplify access to the data. Okay, so now my harmonization is created and configured. I will just run. What is it doing? It's just applying the harmonization to the data coming from US and moving that to final. Let's take a look at some data that is already being loaded in final. And let's see how we solved the problem here. Remember, we're trying to solve the aspect that the source data has zip code, but my entity has postal code. You can see here the entity using postal code. I highlighted here one of the capabilities of the Data Hub, which is harmonization. There are other capabilities such as mastering that I have not described, and many other aspects of the enrichment of data. I just showed one aspect, enriching security. I want to now demonstrate a very cool feature of the Data Hub, which is the PII access. So now I'm going to move to our query console, which is our tool used by developers to create queries, and I will exemplify this capability that is unique to MarkLogic. What I'm doing here, I'm running a query to find customers that have sales in their title. I'm running this as a manager, and the concept here is this manager has the particular role to see all information about the customer. So when I run this, what we expect is to see everything about the entity. So we see all attributes, including those that I had marked with the locker. But if I don't have a role that grants me access to all the information, here I'm exemplifying with a clerk. When I run queries, when I try to access the database is enforced at its core that I cannot see those attributes of the entity. So as you can see here in the response, those three pieces of information are removed. I demonstrated some capabilities of the Data Hub, in particular harmonization and how we easily control access to personal identifiable information. The Data Hub is a very powerful tool to help you harmonize data from multiple sources. You can ingest other sources and continue to harmonize. They can be different. There can be different attributes that you want to do the mapping. You can also do mastering and enrichment, as I said. Please go online, download the Data Hub, and start playing with Quick Start in your laptop. Thank you.